My name is Shannon Green and welcome to yet another episode of Toxic Crime Tuesdays. So last week was part 2 of the Pizzagate conspiracy and the final part of it. If you haven't watched it, we delved a little bit deeper into the possibility that there could be an elite paedophile ring amongst us. So if you haven't already watched them, then I really suggest you do. It was a really interesting case to cover. It was incredibly frustrating. Certain aspects of it were really hard to read about and listen to, but it was completely necessary in order to get it out there. So if you haven't watched it, then please do. This week's episode is really exciting. It's not an exciting case because it's awful, but it's exciting to me because it's my first recommended case. And it's just really cool because it's nice to see that there's people out there that are actually watching my videos and are enjoying them and enjoying the way that I tell them and are actually recommending certain cases for me to cover because they want to hear me talk about them, which is just really cool. Just before I get started, I just want to give my standard intro and just say that if, like me, you are interested in true crime, then I highly suggest that you click the subscribe button because I am here every single Tuesday. As you probably guessed, this week's episode is about Victoria Martens. Now, this is going to be a really difficult case to listen to. There are going to be certain aspects of the case that are going to be really troubling and challenging to listen to, but it is important to speak about it and get it out there. This case is just incredibly sad. It contains mentions of severe child abuse, both physical and sexual, and ultimately ending in the brutal murder of a child. If these subjects are understandably too hard for you to listen to, then I completely get that, and maybe just watch one of my other previous videos if you just want to skip this one, or maybe just wait until next week and hopefully I'll have something that's slightly lighter. But you know, it's true crime, there are always going to be difficult cases to listen to, but it's important that we speak about them and we get these victims' voices heard. Just before I actually get into the case, obviously, like I've said, this case is about child abuse, so I just want to read out some facts about child abuse that you may or may not know. I studied child development and I also worked with children, so there are a lot of elements to this that I am aware about because obviously we are taught about the different types of child abuse. But even when I was reading up on the actual statistics of it all, it is very disgusting and really sad. I'm just going to read out some facts for you all just to raise some awareness in order to show everyone that child abuse is so prevalent and it is a lot more common than what we think, because there are a variation of types of abuse. So I'm just going to read some of this out for you all. Because this case is based in America, I'm going to read out some child abuse facts in America. So there is an alarming number of children that are succumb to child abuse every single year. Researchers have estimated around 3.3 million children are exposed to child abuse every single year. Sadly, most children that are abused are often abused by a relative, by someone they know, love and trust. Abuse is often about power. Forcing a person, a child, to do things and be exposed to that no child or adult should be. Being abused by someone you know often makes it harder to speak out, and it is far easier to be manipulated by someone you love and trust as opposed to a stranger. So what are the different types of abuse? We're going to start off with the most standard one, the most known, which is obviously physical, which is, you know, it's being beaten, it's being hurt, and it's generally not, well, I personally think harming a child as a form of punishment is wrong anyway, but generally with physical abuse, a child is harmed for no reason. They are told that it's for a reason, but it's usually such a minuscule reason. It's something so bizarre, like, I don't know, spilling a drink on the floor and then that child is, let's say, punched, slapped, bitten, kicked, spat at, thrown down the stairs for such a minuscule thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that a child should be hit for doing something, I don't know, big, like hurting another child. I don't think a child should be beaten for that either. I don't think a child should be hit at all. I think that there are other ways to discipline a child, such as taking away certain privileges, maybe a toy, maybe an activity. So you were planning on doing an activity on the weekend and your child was really misbehaving, and you should, you know, like sit them down, talk to them, explain what they have done, what they can do to fix it, and if their behaviour doesn't improve, then take away a certain privilege, such as that activity that you were planning for the weekend. There is absolutely no reason to hit that child, because no child is going to listen, and they are eventually just going to think that that is normal, and then that child could potentially, you know, start hurting other children at school, at nursery, start hurting adults, and maybe when they're older they could potentially be abusive towards a partner or a friend because they think that that is normal behaviour, which obviously it absolutely is not. The next type of abuse is mental or emotional, such as, you know, just being spoken to so cruelly and being told that they are useless and worthless and being called horrible names, or being ignored and constantly criticised. Next, which is quite similar, is obviously verbal, which is the same sort of thing, being called names, being shouted at, being sworn at, not being listened to. Like if your child has sort of done something that you would consider to be bad behaviour, just shouting and screaming at them, which obviously is not going to fix the issue. You need to get down to a child's level and speak to them, ask them what's wrong, listen to them. Then there is neglect, which is a child not having their needs met. You know, not having regulated meal times, not having the correct meals, not being hygienic, not being washed, and not having any kind of sense of routine, being obviously dirty, having unclean clothes, just not being looked after like they should be. Then there is sexual abuse, which obviously is being touched in places that they shouldn't be touched and being forced to take part in sexual activities. Then there is quite a new type of abuse which has really rose in the last few years, and that is FGM, which is female genital mutilation, and that is when the child's clitoris is removed, which is, you know, it's seen as female circumcision. There are no health benefits to it. Can actually cause a lot of health problems. There is no kind of benefits to towards that at all, but it is often practiced amongst certain religions. But there has been absolutely no kind of benefits towards that child at all for having that done. Strangely, it is becoming more and more common. Those are the 6 types of abuse. In America, 1 in 7 children have experienced abuse and or neglect. And here are some 11 facts about child abuse which I've taken from a charity specifically to help children who have experienced some type of abuse. Number 1 is, it's estimated that at least 1 in 7 children in America have experienced child abuse or neglect in the past year. Neglect is the most common form of child abuse, followed by physical, sexual and psychological abuse. In 2018, about 16% of children who were abused experienced more than one kind of maltreatment. Boys and girls experience similar rates of child abuse, 48.6% and 51% respectively. Rates of child abuse and neglect are 5 times higher for children in families with low socio-economic status compared to children in families with higher socio-economic status. Children younger than 1 year old are the most vulnerable to maltreatment, accounting for almost half of child fatalities from abuse in 2018. And that is one fact that I did not realise, and it really struck a chord for me. Like, my child is under 1 and I just couldn't imagine bringing any kind of harm to him whatsoever, and I can't imagine parents wanting to do that to their child. You shouldn't do it to any child. You shouldn't want to cause any harm to your child, but especially when they're under the age of 1, like, they are so innocent and all they want is to please you and to explore the world, and it's just such an amazing time. And it just makes me so sad that there are parents out there that have wanted and have succeeded at causing harm to such a young child. It just breaks my heart. In 2018, 76% of child abuse perpetrators were a parent to their victim. 76% were parents. That's just shocking. Like, when I read through the statistics of this, I just couldn't believe it, and I'm sure you won't be able to too. Number 8. In 2018, 62% of children placed in foster care were removed from their homes due to abusive neglect, totaling over 160,000 children. That's in 1 year. Children who experienced any form of violence in childhood have a 13% greater likelihood of not graduating from high school. Adult survivors of childhood abuse are more likely to experience mental health difficulties, including depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, PTSD, eating disorders and substance use disorders. Number 11. Adult survivors of childhood abuse are more likely to engage in high-risk behaviours like smoking, alcohol and drug use and unsafe sex. They're also more likely to report overall lower health than those who haven't experienced childhood abuse. Those are the 11 facts about child abuse, and I honestly couldn't believe it. I know that, like, hearing the statistics and facts about child abuse must be incredibly difficult to listen to, but it is paramount that we learn the reality and the commonality of child abuse. As you can imagine, that's exactly what this case is about. And today's episode is about a little girl named Victoria Martens, who was just 10 years old when her life was tragically stolen. Victoria Martens was born on the 23rd of August 2006. She lived in Albuquerque in New Mexico with her mother, her younger brother and her mother's boyfriend, Fabian Gonzalez. At the time of Victoria's death, her mother Michelle had only known Fabian for about a month. They had met on Plenty of Fish, and within days of knowing each other, he had moved in. Just a few weeks after, about 4 days before Victoria's death, Fabian's cousin Jessica Kelly, who had an incredibly hefty criminal record and was literally just released from prison, then moved into the Martens family home. It's safe to say with this information that I have just given you that Michelle Martens is and was an incredibly irresponsible parent. I mean, knowing a man, meeting him online, and within just a few days inviting him into your family home to live with your 2 children. Nah. I would not do that. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't even invite a man to meet my child after just a month. I would leave it until I knew I could trust him to some extent and knew that I really knew him. You don't know someone after a month at all. And he had a pretty bad criminal record, which I don't think Michelle even knew about. So it just goes to show that they did not know each other whatsoever. So why on earth would you do that? Why on earth would you invite a man that you hardly know to live in your home with your 2 children? Even if I didn't have children, I wouldn't invite a man to live with me after a few days. That is incredibly irresponsible. And then obviously his cousin moves in after just being released from prison. My God. I don't understand this logic. I don't get it. I don't know why anyone would do that. I wouldn't even want to really associate myself with someone that had the kind of criminal record that she did as well. It was things like sexual assault, it was beating up a police officer, I think it was like robbery, like loads of different things. And you know, I certainly wouldn't want my children associated with someone like that at all, let alone let that person live in my household. Michelle is also, or at least was at the time, an avid drug taker. She often put drugs above the care and safety of her own children, often leaving them at home on their own just so she can go and get a fix. Fabian and Jessica were also heavily into drugs, so I'm sure we can all presume where this is going. Victoria was a typical girl. She loved all things girly and she was incredibly beautiful inside and out. She had short brown hair with a full fringe and beautiful brown eyes. She attended, now I hope I'm going to get this right, Petroglyph Elementary School. She was incredibly popular amongst her class. She was a very likeable young girl. She was so kind and helpful towards her classmates. She did well in school and enjoyed attending. Could this just be because maybe she just really enjoyed school, maybe she really enjoyed learning, but if she had a very toxic household, perhaps school was her safe place, a place where she felt like she could go and she wouldn't have to be scared, feel terrified and be exploited on a daily basis. Perhaps that's why she enjoyed going so much, because it was her safe place. It was somewhere she actually enjoyed being as opposed to her home. Michelle Martens, Victoria's mother, admitted to seeking men online to engage in sexual acts with her 2 children, Victoria and her younger brother, whilst Michelle would stand there and watch. I just can't fathom why. Why become a parent if you're just going to use them as a pawn in your sexual activities, and if you're going to put drugs and everything else above them? If you're not going to be there to protect your children and to look after them and play with them and enjoy them, why have them? Why not just give up your rights as a parent and give those children to someone who is really going to take care of them? It just infuriates me. It makes me so angry because there are so many parents, well, there are so many people that want to be parents that have been trying for so long, that have been unable to have a child naturally and would make such fantastic parents, haven't been able to. And then there's skanks like this, like absolute scumbags that just use children for their disgusting behaviour, that aren't going to take their actual, that aren't going to fulfil their responsibilities as a parent. Like, why do it then? Why? I know obviously not everyone plans on having a child, but if you really felt like you couldn't look after that child, have an abortion. I know people are going to be pissed off because there might be some people that are pro-life as opposed to pro-choice. I, however, am pro-choice. I do not agree with people looking... I do not agree with people looking at abortion like it's a form of contraception. I do not believe that at all. Like, that winds me up. However, accidents can happen. It's not an accident, but having a child is the most precious gift. However, unplanned pregnancies can happen. Even if you are as careful as possible, you can still get pregnant. But if you felt like you could not take care of this child, that is why abortion should always be an option. Because some people are not meant to be parents. Some people don't want to be parents, and that is why they take every precaution in order to not get pregnant. However, some people do still end up getting pregnant. And that is exactly why I think abortion should always be an option. You may not agree with it, and that's fine, because abortion is, you know, it's a controversial subject. A lot of people view it as murder. I do not. Even being a parent myself, I think it should always be an option, because there are people that shouldn't be parents. There are also people that, you know, have been raped and do not want to have that child, because that child could potentially be a constant reminder of what happened to them. And so that is why abortion should be an option for those scenarios. And like I said, I don't think it's right that, because there are some people out there that think, oh, if I get pregnant, it's fine, I'll just get an abortion. No, that is wrong. You should not view abortion like that whatsoever. And generally, for most people that have had an abortion, it is the last resort. You have generally gone over every other possible scenario in your head. You've probably thought about keeping that child, raising that child, giving it up for adoption. Abortion is rarely the first choice, because it is such a difficult thing to come to terms with, because it is very, very sad. However, people that have had abortions view it that it would potentially be better to abort the baby as opposed to that baby living a life of just not a very good life, where that child could potentially be succumbed to some type of abuse, whether it was neglect, physical. I do understand that there are people that do feel very strongly against it, and there may be people watching this that do think that I'm totally wrong, but that is just my opinion, so take it or leave it. So now we're going to fast forward to August the 24th, 2016. Well, sort of August the 23rd, that night, / August 24th. So you understand when I get into it. So it was just one day after Victoria's 10th birthday. A birthday she was probably so excited for. Becoming 10, I think, is a pretty big deal for a child, because it's reaching double digits. So it kind of makes you feel quite grown up in a way. It makes you feel like, you know, you're just getting closer to becoming a teenager. I remember like being so excited for my 10th birthday. I felt like I was grown up. Even though I wasn't, I was nowhere near a grown up, but I felt like it. I felt so mature and grown up, and like I wanted to start dressing differently and dressing a bit older and wearing makeup. I mean, I don't really think 10-year-olds should wear makeup, but I wanted to at that time. And I can just imagine that morning, because it was a school day as well, which I know going to school isn't always that exciting on your birthday. However, for Victoria, it was probably so exciting to be able to attend school, attend her safe place and spend her special day with all of her classmates. I can imagine it was just so exciting that morning to wake up and know that she was going to be somewhere safe on her special day. But little did she know that her life was going to be taken away so cruelly just hours later. Yes, so before I get into the timeline, I'm just going to talk about what the investigators say. So, according to investigators, witnesses say that Jessica Kelly, Fabian's cousin, was seen carrying Victoria Martens to the apartment that they all lived in around 10 p.m. that night. Later that night, neighbours reported hearing screaming coming from the apartment. Shortly afterwards, at around 4:30 a.m. on August the 24th, Michelle Martens and Fabian Gonzalez left the apartment and reported to the neighbours that Jessica had attacked them with an iron. After responding to the 911 call, police entered the second-storey apartment building where they saw smoke coming from behind the closed bathroom door. Upon opening the door, the responding officers discovered the dismembered body of Victoria Martens. She was obviously pronounced dead at the scene. Her body was found cut up and on fire, with some of her organs even being removed. An autopsy revealed that she had been sexually assaulted and she was strangled to death. And then she was stabbed repeatedly and dismembered, which then her body was set on fire. When Michelle was interviewed, she had stated that Fabian and Jessica had sexually assaulted Victoria. They gave her meth to calm her down so that they could engage in sexual acts with Victoria. However, when the toxicology report came back, it showed that there was no meth in her system. There was only alcohol. So investigators were obviously quite confused by this because they didn't really understand why she had said that they had given her meth when they hadn't. After that, all eyes were kind of on Michelle and her involvement in everything, because obviously they had now just discovered that she had lied. They kind of wondered how this had even occurred when she was in the home. Why did she not do anything? And it's also important to mention that Victoria's younger brother was not there at the time. He was not present. He was staying with his dad for the evening. So I just thought I'd throw that bit in, just so you didn't think, where was he? It was determined that on Victoria's birthday, the 23rd of August, she had died between 7:45 and 8:30. So Michelle Martens, Fabian Gonzalez and Jessica Kelly were arrested and charged with the murder of Victoria Martens. They were held on a $1 million cash-only bond. All three of them were arraigned on September the 16th, 2016. So I'll go through with you the timeline on the night that Victoria died. So at 4:25 on August the 23rd, 2016, Victoria gets off her school bus and goes home. And at this point, Michelle and Fabian aren't at home. I don't really know where Jessica is at this point, but it doesn't state whether she was there or not. I'm pretty sure Victoria was just at home on her own. At 5:07, Michelle and Fabian returned to the apartment after just picking up some drugs. Could they not have just left the drugs for one night to celebrate Victoria's birthday? At 6:05 p.m, Victoria accompanies Fabian to the gas station. And then between 6:15 and 6:20, Victoria and Fabian return to the apartment. At 6:30, Michelle and Fabian leave and go to Paradise Hills. I'm not really sure what that is. I don't know if that's an area or a club or something, I don't know. But at 7:02, Michelle and Fabian return to the apartment. And at 7:05 p.m, Victoria is seen very much alive by neighbours. And then at 7:06, Michelle and Fabian leave again. I don't know where they keep going. And at 7:38 p.m, Michelle and Fabian are near Rio Bravo Boulevard and Coors Boulevard. And at 7:59 p.m, Michelle and Fabian are seen near 5 Points and Bridge Boulevard. At 8:47, Michelle and Fabian arrive at the apartment. And at 8:48, eyewitnesses say that Victoria's body is seen being carried outside the apartment. So, from what we know, Victoria died between 7:45 and 8:30. So, with Michelle and Fabian both having their phones tracked, obviously they could trace them at these certain areas, so they knew that's where they were at that time, so they couldn't actually place them at the murder scene. So this kind of confirmed that Michelle and Fabian were somewhat innocent. They were not totally innocent, because they were very much active participants in this, in the fact that they were neglectful and they were not there. They should have been, Michelle should have been looking after her own child. She did not have left the house to go and get drugs and left Victoria at home with a woman that had literally, that she hardly knew and had only just been released from prison. This proves Martens and Gonzalez were not present when the murder and rape took place. But subsequently, the 9 charges against Fabian were ultimately dropped, which included second-degree murder and criminal sexual penetration. However, Gonzalez still faces a series of charges including child abuse resulting in death and tampering with murder. Michelle agreed to a plea bargain which guarantees that she will face 12 to 15 years in prison. However, it is possible that she could actually have her sentence halved. That's justice for you. Apparently, it's not classified as a serious violent offence. Of course it was. If she just looked after her child and didn't allow these people in her home. So we will get to Jessica Kelly in a moment. But just before, the autopsy that was carried out on Victoria showed that she was sexually abused on the night of her murder. However, it also showed up that she had been sexually abused a lot before her murder. The report stated that Victoria actually had an STD named HPV, which showed that she had previously been sexually abused before the night of her murder. It was pretty unclear as to what actually happened, because Michelle Martens previously said that she had allowed Fabian and Jessica to rape her daughter whilst she actually watched, and then Fabian had strangled Victoria, to which Fabian and Jessica then dismembered the body and set her body on fire in the bathtub. But it's really strange, because obviously there is evidence to suggest that Michelle wasn't actually even present when this happened. So it's confusing and concerning as to why she admitted that that had happened. But then Michelle stated that she was an alcohol naive person and she is a people pleaser. So when she was initially interviewed by the police, she just kind of felt like she told them what they wanted to hear, basically. So she ended up confessing to something that she was very much part of, but wasn't actually an active participant in the murders, but she confessed to being there when she wasn't even there at that time, which is very, very strange. So when the autopsy was done on Victoria's body, there was some partial male DNA found on Victoria's body, and the DNA sample did not match Fabian's. And all of the first responders, it didn't match any of them either, so no one really knew whose it was. And there was plenty of physical evidence to suggest that she had been raped, but there was no sperm actually found on Victoria. There was just this partial male DNA that was found on Victoria's back. When all three of them were arrested for the murder of Victoria, Fabian and Jessica turned on each other, both blaming each other, even though it was evident that Jessica and this potential man were the main culprits for Victoria's murder. Jessica proceeded to blame Fabian, and Fabian proceeded to blame Jessica. Jessica Kelly sadly will not be going to trial because she accepted a plea bargain, which means that Jessica faces up to 50 years in prison. Since she has 2 prior felonies, she will be sentenced as habitual offender, which adds 20 years in prison to the sentence. However, if she behaves well, it could be halved by 20 years. And Fabian Gonzalez was charged with child abuse resulting in death and tampering with evidence. Even to this day, the male DNA found on Victoria's back is still unknown. It has been marked as John Doe. So according to Jessica Kelly, on the night of Victoria's death, she was, I don't really know what this means, but she had described that she was tweaking and experiencing paranoid delusions due to meth, which was the afternoon that she had agreed to look after Victoria whilst Michelle and Fabian went out. I've already given my opinions on Michelle's lifestyle choices and her parenting choices as well. But why on earth would you leave your child with someone that is clearly very intoxicated? Jessica said she should have known that she was too intoxicated and impaired to care for a child. When an unknown man arrived at the apartment and asked for Fabian and went to Victoria's room, she should have stopped him. The man strangled Victoria to the point of death or to the point of causing great bodily harm. Evidence would support a reasonable inference that Kelly knew or should have known that the man posed a substantial and unjustifiable risk of serious harm to Victoria. After the man left, Jessica carried Victoria's body down the stairs but was interrupted by Michelle and Fabian's return. Jessica told Fabian that Victoria had been killed, and the 2 cousins agreed to conceal the crime and dispose of Victoria's body and to hide the murder from Michelle by keeping her away from Victoria's room. After cleaning up the room, Jessica grabbed an iron and struck Michelle on the face with it. This is the basis for the aggravated assault charge. There was a struggle between all 3 of them, and Michelle and Fabian left the apartment. Jessica then set Victoria's body on fire and took down 2 smoke detectors in the apartment. This is what Jessica believes happens and has stated that this is the truth. And her defence attorney is hoping that they are going to be able to build a strong case against Fabian and against this random man, in hopes that Jessica's sentence will be halved. Well, in hopes that Jessica will get a much lighter sentence. That's pretty much all we've got for this case. It is an incredibly hard, incredibly heavy case. Yeah, that is all we've got for this week's case. So please let me know what you guys think, who you think is most responsible for Victoria's death. If you believe Jessica's bizarre story, if there was actually a man that had entered the home and done this. To be honest, it could be possible because obviously all three of them were involved in drugs and were involved with some very dangerous people. So it is possible that a man could have come in, wanted money for drugs or whatever, but why would he not just rob the place? And how would he know where Victoria's room is? And why would he then just go in there and rape and kill Victoria? I don't know. That part of it doesn't really sit right with me. Yeah, I don't really know if I believe that bullshit story, to be honest. I think that Jessica is responsible. Why? I have no idea. It could have been somewhat drug related. Maybe she was hallucinating to an extent, and for some insane reason she stole the life of a 10-year-old girl. Do you think that Michelle and Fabian were more involved, or do you think just the fact that everything I've told you, they are still very compliant in everything that happened by the fact that they were just completely neglectful? And judging by the autopsy report as well, it's quite clear that Fabian regularly sexually assaulted Victoria, to which he should certainly be held accountable for. It's just an incredibly sad story. It's a kind of case that I just hear too often, and it just breaks my heart that anyone could bring harm to a child. So I'm going to try and cover something next week that's maybe that maybe doesn't strike a chord too much, maybe doesn't involve a child this time, so it won't be too difficult to listen to. Although, like I said, it is true crime, it's always going to be difficult to listen to, but hopefully it'll be something that's just a bit lighter and not so sad, though it's always sad. I don't know how to explain it, I'm sorry. Hopefully you know what I mean though. So if you've enjoyed watching this video, please let me know your thoughts and opinions. Obviously let me know who you think is most responsible. I'd love to hear what you guys think. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next week for another episode of Toxic Crime Tuesdays. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next week. Bye guys.